Alexander, so you are going to speak in English, right?
Yes, I just started recording. I will start sharing my screen now. Just confirm that you're able to see my screen.
What shall we do? I'm sorry.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, sure.
So I will put you on mute during my talk, and let's talk about Java Enterprise Edition patterns. You are free to interrupt me at any time. Just ask your questions, or feel free to make some notes and ask them later. Any option is comfortable.
Let's start.
Yep. So let me introduce myself. I have all necessary backgrounds, Master of Science degree from Besseer. I'm Oracle certified professional in Java Standard Edition, and I currently prepare myself for master level certification for Java Architect. And since 2013, I'm CEO and Enterprise Architect at Red Nevis Software Development Company. So let's talk about course agenda. We will talk about Java Enterprise Edition architecture and core concepts. We will cover several patterns. I would say a lot of dozen of them. They are distributed basically among tiers and engineering approach like sync and async. So reactive patterns are async ones. And among tiers, they're distributed on presentation, business, and integration tiers. We will cover a little bit security patterns as well and talk what microprofile is, how it relates to Java Enterprise Edition, and what best practice do we have here. I would expect a certain experience and knowledge from listeners of that course. You have to understand basic object-oriented programming concepts. You have to have some knowledge of Java programming language. It should be clear from slides and code examples how written code works, and you should be able to modify it and submit practical exercises that will follow. I would expect also some basic understanding of Java Enterprise Edition programming concepts, working with Maven, modern IDEs, and Git. My plan is to provide development infrastructure based on Maven archetype that you should be able to use from any modern IDE and submit your solutions to home tasks via online using Git. So,
Alexander, can I interrupt you?
Yes, sure.
So as far as I understand, the listeners of our courses of Java Core and Java Enterprise can understand the material, the information given in this course. Am I right?
Yep. Also, some basic English knowledge would help if I will explain that in English.
Basic English, pre-intermediate, intermediate, what level, to be more exact?
I mean that A2 level would be good enough.
Okay.
I basically use a simple language, no phrasal verbs. I try to limit myself using that because I can understand that English is a second language would be second language for most of our listeners. So just as in usual programming books, as they use simple language, as will I.
Okay, I see. Thank you so much. Let's continue.
I would like to provide two references here. Don't think that. Excuse me, Tatiana, could you put your on mute? We started to hear you.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, finally. Good.
Awesome. So don't think that books written 8 years ago are obsolete and provide that knowledge. That's not the case. But I will also provide references to modern one related to Java, to latest Java E8 release. And as Gang of 4, for example, patterns started at 1994 and continue influence a lot software development experience. Java Enterprise Edition patterns that are 10 years old or 5 years old are also important to know, and we will discuss why. So let's talk about what are Java Enterprise Edition patterns. Design patterns are basically solution templates. They provide general approach to some common problem that engineers face during their work. And the importance in knowing patterns is that not reinvent the bicycle, not repeat yourself, don't repeat yourself, popular drive principle. And that has a direct impact and very strong impact on how much work could you provide during your usual working day. If you will start to develop everything by yourself, answering problems that were appeared in the past multiple times, it could be just a waste of time. Not always, but in most of the cases. Much better to use some common approach from the very beginning, find appropriate pattern, then customize it and use according to your needs. So Java Enterprise Edition design patterns are basically extension of general design patterns, and they address common problems that appear in enterprise software as a result of its complexity and complexity of its environment. We will talk about them more in that course, and now we'll proceed with core concepts that all Java Enterprise Edition patterns are based on, and the platform itself. In order to understand any of these patterns, we have to have some basic knowledge of what is grounding for Java Enterprise Edition platform. I'm happy to say that only a few of them build, let's say, core concept platform. They are convention over configuration, dependency injection, aspect-oriented programming, and persistence model. Let's talk about convention over configuration. This approach came from Ruby on Rails framework, and many other modern frameworks built on top of that. So what does it mean for developer? You have to only provide specific configuration options for your application. You don't have to configure everything. You don't to provide obvious defaults for everything. This will dramatically simplify your development experience. From Java Enterprise Edition perspective, we could get rid of plumbing or boilerplate code using that approach. And that's something that we could observe, keeping in mind the evolution of Java Enterprise Edition from versions 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. Continuously, we reduce number of decisions that is necessary to make for a developer. We reduce amount of boilerplate code, XML configuration descriptors, stuff like that. That is one of the core concepts of Java Enterprise Edition as of now. For example, in previous release, in order to define a stateless EGB, we had to write some Java doc. Some particular information regarding this enterprise Java bean was put in Java doc command, and compiler was need to parse it and extract it from there. As of now, it is as easy as you can see. You just put a stateless annotation and that's it. No need for Java doc. You don't need to provide any XML descriptors. And there is no need explicitly define remote or local interface. There are certain defaults. I would say that this approach has some disadvantages too. From development experience, you have to know all the defaults that framework provides to you, and you have to rely on them. So, for example, in that particular case, what remote or local interface automatically provided for you, you have to know. Otherwise, you have to look for that in documentation. Good news is that this information is pretty common, easy to reach, and basically every developer have to know that. So no dissatisfaction as a result, let's say. Another important principle is dependency injection. It's called, in another words, inversion of control. And as the name says, control of bean creation is inverted using that pattern, that core principle. So as you can hear, dependency injection, sometimes also called the pattern, a good best practice, standard approach to address certain common issues. And the most important advantage here is that it separates bean creation from bean usage logic. That provides additional benefits like easier component testing. From Java Enterprise Edition perspective, there is no need for explicit lookups through GMDI, for example, anymore. Everything that you have to do is just simply put an inject annotation, and that's it. No need for factories, custom codes, again, GMDI lookup. Why it's important, why it's better than some explicit configuration. It's shorter, it's more concise. You don't need to repeat yourself and do again and again copy some boilerplate code, obvious configuration. As a disadvantage, probably in some cases, if you have to inject multiple implementations of the same field of the same bean, for example, as a single field, you have to provide some additional information. And that simplicity will go away after some point of complexity of your code. But anymore, that would be much simpler than before. Before, I mean in previous releases. So from historical perspective, that inject annotation was picked up from Spring framework. They developed dependency injection first of all. And there were different approaches how to deal with that. We are lucky that Java Enterprise Edition, Spring framework, and other implementation like Google Juice got common divider, let's say, and that GSR 330 standard is a common approach for all Java framework and implementation since a few years and as of now. And we are safe to use injecting our code, and it could be even portable from some perspective. Let's provide some example. So in previous release of Java Enterprise Edition, let's say 10 years ago, you had to configure GNDI lookup as in this particular example and provide explicit lookup for some service home. What you can see at the bottom of the page, in modern Java Enterprise Edition, everything you have to do is just put an inject annotation. And there are implicit requirements for service from that perspective. Service could be an interface, and you have to provide implementation of that interface that is reachable from class path. And that implementation have to have default constructor, also with public level of access. If that conditions, all of them are satisfied, dependency injection will work as expected. And if you have multiple implementation of service, you have to customize this injection point and provide some bean name. So you could easily distinguish between implementation using their names. Any questions so far? Don't you sleep, guys?
Oh, excuse me, did you ask anything?
I asked for some questions. So.
Yeah, just because I was taking some notes.
Okay. So let's proceed. Let's talk about differences. Let's compare EGP injection and context and dependency injection. So as you probably know, you could use EGP annotation and inject annotation, and they will work differently. So EGP will inject enterprise Java bean for you, stateless, stateful, or singleton, stateless bean. And context and dependency injection potentially could inject any class that have public default constructor for you. The main difference between EGP injection and CDI is that CDI beans are contextual. Strictly speaking, EGP don't have a context, but you know that for stateful session bean, one instance per client would be created and managed by container for you, except for removing that should be explicitly provided when you would like to do that. Of course, stateful session bean will be destroyed when container shutdowns. But from a CDI perspective, you will provide explicit scope, request scoped, session scoped, or application scoped. So for example, if we're talking about HTTP communication between client and server, and on the server we have some HTTP method, let's say doGet in the servlet. If we will use some bean injected via CDI inside that method, and if we will use request scoped in that particular case, each time server reaches this doGet method, a new instance of this CDI bean will be created by container, and immediately after method ends, this instance will be destroyed and available for garbage collection. The same applies for another scopes. I mean, session scope, life cycle of session scoped CDI bean will be tightly connected with the HTTP session. And application scoped CDI beans will live as long application live. Another important approach is aspect-oriented programming and interceptors. So what are aspects? They are no more than configurable decorators of your code. They are flexible as they could be. They basically separate business logic from cross-cutting code. What does it mean? Let's imagine that you have some transaction context, and certain beans, certain methods of beans have to work inside transaction. What you can do is to explicitly open, commit, close transactions inside your code. But imagine that you will have to repeat that as long as you have more methods in your code, and you don't want to do that. Java Enterprise Edition container and the platform could provide that functionality for you, especially using aspects. You will just mark what beans, what particular piece of your code have to work through transactional context. And all magic, all cross-cutting code, in that case, transactional code, will work like a charm for you under the hood. You will not need to specify that explicitly. And that's something that you wanted to reach. You want to focus on business logic, on writing what is important for your customer, and just simply mark what should be executed inside a single transaction and what should be not. So this technology is pretty old and developed more than 20 years ago. It was from the very beginning of Java Enterprise Edition platform and EGB 1.0 release. People didn't start to name it AOP immediately. It was just kind of decorator that works automatically using reflection for certain common approaches and common places in your application. So if you would like to trace, for example, execution of some method, you don't need to do too much. Single annotation around invoke would be good enough. Strictly speaking, you would have to enable AOP explicitly in your application configuration, but that's something that you have to do only once for your application. And after that, you are free to use around invoke. So, small summary of what we were talked about. We covered convention over configuration, dependency injection, and other core principles of Java Enterprise Edition platform. And the most important is that they radically simplifies programming model. It's nowadays, it's as simple as possible to use all powerful Java Enterprise Edition techniques and everything that platform provides. I would say that previous J2E patterns and some of the Gang of 4 patterns as well in major release of Java Enterprise Edition could be eliminated. We could get rid of them, or at least they could be replaced using single annotation. For example, singleton pattern, most famous, could be as easily as single annotation in usage implemented in Java EE platform. And short answer is that you could use dependency injection. And that will be safe and robust implementation of singleton, because bean creation and bean usage logic absolutely separated from container perspective. There would be no race conditions, no concurrent access, because container will first of all create all instances and then allow to use of them. We will not have practice session as of now. So that's it from my side. Any questions so far?
Tatiana, do you have questions?
I wish I had. Just a second. Игорь, чуть-чуть, хорошо? Okay, I'm sorry. So I don't have any questions. I just have maybe kind of remark. Well, Alexander, my remark is, as far as I understand, that that's going to be online webinar, right? That's going to be a webinar. All course.
As of now, we used online trial lesson mode, let's say, because of current pandemic situation.
Yeah. But in future?
Yes, in future, we could use any option. Any option is available for me. So, and for engineering, from engineering perspective, we could use, we could build all course online, and I could teach online.
So, what do you prefer?
I would prefer in class.
In class, sure.
Because there are a lot of competitor courses, and there would be no reason for some experienced engineers to choose our course over a dozen of available courses. The only reason is that they could come into a class and ask their particular questions, ask for some help to help them configure software, stuff like that. So I believe.
But I'm sorry, Alexander, I'm sorry, but they can do this online as well? I mean, ask for help.
Yes, they can. But based on my experience, it's easier to reach during in-class course.
Yes,
well, the situation is unpredictable, and we do not know when it's gonna be over. So if we have to start it online, are you ready for that?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
We could
Well,
switch to in-class communication as it becomes
once it's
an
over.
available option.
Yeah, sure. Just because talking about your online speech, speaking the way you speak, speaking as if a boat drifting in calm water, and the students might get asleep. So this is my general impression. So very good speech, but it's kind of monotonous. This is what my concern is if we talk about online class, because online class it lacks a lot of things like in face-to-face contact, right? And you just cannot push every student that you wish as quickly as you can do it in class. That is why when it is long distance education, online webinar, so the speech is supposed to be interrupted with some questions to students. Otherwise, they will get asleep just because it's not like, it's not thriller, it's Java. It's quite a serious thing, but for me, it's kind of boring. For them, of course, it's not. But from my experience, what I see in the videos that I get from our teachers, when I compare anything connected with programming, comparing to, for example, web design or business analysis, it's more, it's more, it would not be right to say boring, but it's more monotonous, if you understand what I mean. I mean that you have to interrupt it and to make a kind of action. And this action can be asking your students to do something for you, like sharing a screen, for example, coding for you and for all audience. And you see it from the screen that the student shares, and different questions that you address to particular students or to the whole group. Um, what I mean is during this webinar, I didn't have it, and I didn't feel as if I'm involved. But yeah, but in other respects, that was fine. Good speech and good presentation. I mean, it lacked action for me and kind of feedback.
It's not so easy to interact with your girls on that particular topic. Probably
I
on topic
understand,
of
yeah.
coronavirus or some playing with kids, we could interact, but on Java Enterprise Edition. Actually, I tried to ask some questions, and there were no answers.
Well, I have some trainers that do have a lot of interaction with their students.
That would be my first course, and of course,
Yeah, I
not
understand. Yeah.
ideal, and that's something that I will work and I will improve. Interaction would
Alexander,
be
yeah,
during the
I
practice
was saying
session
it
that
just because
was
it's kind of remark,
unmuted.
just a remark.
We will have a lot of interaction during practice session. Was submitted during that trial lesson because of lack of your engineering expertise. Okay.
Yeah, I understand. But you had to look at us as if we are students. Yeah? Okay, no big deal. It's fine, it's fine. Because you looked at us as if we are representatives of the academy, right? Not like your students. And to ask questions would look kind of stupid, right? They do not understand anything. I ask them and they put them in a kind of awkward situation. But it's fine, it's fine. I understand why you didn't address any questions to us. In other respects, I do not have any kind of issues with your presentation, with your with content that I don't understand, but I just followed the flow of your speech. So that's it. Lena, do you have anything to add?
No, actually, I agree with Tatiana on most cases. For me, it's also looked like kind of monotonous, but it's my problem. Well, in general, what I liked most of all is the structure of the lesson. So you introduced the topic of our today's lesson. You introduced us with the goals we're going to reach, and you somehow summarized at the end. In general, it was okay. The structure of the lesson is okay. The presentation is pretty good, but it's my problem that for me it was kind of monotonous. But of course, you can do something to make it a bit more lively. Yeah, no questions.
Yeah.
Not too much
So-
fun in Java Enterprise Edition.
I know.
Mostly
It's
about
true.
pain and headache for the engineers.
So we do understand it. As I said, it's not a thriller. It's not a drama movie or whatever.
Yeah. So thank
Okay.
you for your participation. I will provide a link for the recording as well.
Mhm.
Feel free to share. And let's continue offline.
Okay. Okay. Alexander, thank you so much. Definitely, we are with you on this topic, on this subject, and we will be glad to see you among our trainers, our teachers.
Actually, I suppose the following meeting is going to be with Natalia Salagus, who is the deputy director of our academy. And she is going to walk you through our following steps. Tatiana, am I right?
I think so, just because it's her project, as far as I understand, right?
Yes. So probably I will introduce you to Natalia, and you will continue your communication with her.
Okay.
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 Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you, guys.